back, everyone. This is Miguel.
And Michelle.
And today we're going to talk about things in the Disney parks that we notice as artists and that we like. We think it's really important to address these things because you might overlook them. So Michelle, what are some of the first couple of things as an artist that you like at the Disney parks?
So starting with Magic Kingdom, there is this mural that you kind of see only if you're entering through the Cinderella castle, and it's kind of like on the wall. And it's actually like a mosaic style with a medieval look to it. The story is basically based on Cinderella, so the depiction of Cinderella going through dealing with her stepmother and stepsisters all the way to when she marries the prince. And it's all in this style of like a 14th century mosaic. So it's kind of cool. It's pretty big. In a way, you don't really notice it, or at least like you're too excited to like go through the castle. But I think for us as artists, we really appreciate how it's not in your face, but I thought it's really a nice appreciation of the story in a different art style. What do you think of the mural that I was talking about?
Oh no, I mean this is something that the first time around I did notice common sense of like indifference, right? Like it's just part of the background. You're not really there to appreciate that. You're on your way to the ride or to get food. But if you just stop and think like just for a moment and have that understanding that Disney is known for the arts, not just for the rides and people watch the animations obviously, but an artist. And so when you just think about that for a second, then you realize like, wait a minute, this is an entire mural, like they didn't have to do this. They really didn't. It could have just been a brick castle wall, but they put the whole story there. They put everything. Another good example, and as you may have noticed, I'm wearing a Japanese Star Wars t-shirt. So even in Galaxy's Edge, that's something that I may not be as much of a fan compared to the world of Pandora, but there's plenty of other artistic stuff to see there too. For instance, if you're a big nerd, you might notice there is this cracked mural in one of the Galaxy's Edge stores, like it's a big gift shop, and you would notice this really large mural depicting an ancient battle between forces of light and the dark side. And in fact, this is a reference to specifically in episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, towards the very end when Palpatine revealed himself to be a Sith Lord. There is a mural in the background. That's the same mural, except it's cracked. So it's kind of suggesting that they have took it from that scene and it got cracked along the way, and there it is. Yeah, you should check that one out.
And it's really cool because it really taps into sort of like a fan service for anybody who's like a huge fan of Star Wars. So if they see that, they're like, oh my gosh, I saw that's in the movie. It's pretty nice to have that kind of feeling when you're in the parks, that you see these sort of details that as a fan, oh yeah, I definitely know what this is about. Another example of a detail that not many people may be aware of, and just because at first glance it seems like an aesthetic decorative design, at the land there's this mosaic mural on the sides before you enter the building, and this is in Epcot. Not so much about the story of what the mural represents, but the story behind it is really more interesting. So apparently it was designed by a father and daughter artist, and one of the cool things that they did is that the murals are supposed to be like a symmetrical or reflective of each other, like they're supposed to be the same, but one way to identify whose is the daughters and whose is the fathers, there's like a misplaced mosaic piece that you could kind of find it. It's like a really random small piece, but it's actually kind of cool when you actually do find the piece, because then you're like, wait a second, it's like it's like a jade emerald.
Yeah, a jade.
Are they the same?
It's like jade stone.
Yeah.
An emerald stone.
Yeah, a green colored thing.
Yeah.
And it's like misplaced in one certain spot versus the other side. And so it's kind of like sort of like a hunt to see which one is which. We're not going to tell you which side it is. You should find it yourself. Or
yeah, it's a strange story, but I guess once you find it, that's the reward, supposedly. Like, oh, it's that thing.
With that in mind, it's kind of nice to hear those kind of stories and not so much about like, oh, this mural means this. It's sort of more of the backstories that we appreciate as artists. Another example of like the tree of life at Animal Kingdom, but only if you get a little bit closer, is that when you can actually start seeing merging details. And these details are carvings of animals, and there's like about 300 of them, even more. Kind of cool, because when you're trying to see one animal, then you notice it's connected to another animal, and it's like it merges like beautifully and even extends all the way to the branches, to the roots. When you get closer to the tree, which you can, but you're going into like Bug's Life, which is one of the attractions in the tree, you could actually start seeing all these really cool details. So in this case, the Tree of Life is representative of, or paying homage to all the animals in their place, and it's really, really cool to see it up close. Just because it's carved. That's probably like one of the details I think it's kind of obvious, but better appreciated up close.
Speaking of things then which you can sort of like be close to physically, this goes without saying that these things are also kind of interactive in a sense, right? Like with the Tree of Life, you can explore all of, underground, all around the giant tree. There's also the world of Pandora that I briefly mentioned before. The reason I really, really love that section of Animal Kingdom is because they make it so convincing, where all the plants, the floating rocks, it's as if you're in that world. And just the sheer amount of detail to make it look almost realistic, or just almost real, right? Like sometimes I would even wonder if some of those plants are actually real, and they just happen to create that composition to make it look like it's alien. So I really appreciate that amount of detail with the world of Pandora.
The really cool thing about Disney is that even in the very beginning, Walt Disney's vision was to have these different worlds constructed in a way that you really feel like you're in that world or in that place. And it continues now with the new addition of like Galaxy's Edge for Star Wars fans, Pandora for Avatar fans, and even like Toy Story Land. That's sort of like a replacement for Pixar Place. I don't know what it used to be called, but it really makes Toy Story Land makes you feel like you're an ant at that point, because everything looks like enlarged toys. And also Fantasyland, where they basically added like the princesses like castles and stuff. Belle's castle, well technically the Beast's castle, Tangle's tower, and Ariel's grotto. And it's really cool to have these immersive environment inspired by the movies that we all grew up with. The inner kid in me is just so excited to just be in this environment and space. And I think it makes you easily become a kid. Like, how can you not?
I really enjoy just walking around, not really doing much of anything either. It's just sometimes I just almost daydream and just kind of appreciate the sheer amount of detail in the visuals. But of course you have the rides, and whether something is functional or not functional, it really shows that these Imagineers put in a lot of this work to fulfill Disney's vision. There's this saying, I believe it's in Pixar as well, where the art challenges the technology and the technology promotes the arts. So that's something that both Pixar and Disney lives by.
Another side note, but it's something to acknowledge, is that with all these details and all these like art, and it's doing its job if you don't notice it at first, because it is embedded into the space that you're entering. Half of the time you can best appreciate it because you're enjoying yourself and you're reimagining yourself in this whole new world. And I think that's enough appreciation for the Imagineers, who worked really hard to like get these details.
Oh, and one little last thing that many of us don't even notice either is the merchandise. Disney storybooks that some of you grew up with. There's like behind the scenes that you can check out, I guess on YouTube or Disney Plus. I was even surprised how seriously they took that, and now I appreciate all those old Disney books that I grew up as a child. But anyway, I think we pretty much exhausted everything you need to know about things you don't notice, especially if you're an artist at the Disney park. So yeah, well, let us know in the comments below if there's anything we've missed or that you think you hadn't noticed before. And I hope you enjoy this talk. Would be helpful the next time you ever visit.
Alright, we'll see you guys around. Bye!
See ya!